Hey, welcome back to another video. Oh, why does it look like that? Today, we're going to be reacting to my man Thomas Sowell. And also Stephen Picker. Subscribe, turn on post notifications, smash that like button. Interesting enough, let's just hop right into the video, because let's just hop right into the video. Record. Notepad.
Listen to what Jordan Peterson is saying. He's saying universities are dominated by the left. Now, for him, the left is anybody to the left of Attila the Hun. In fact, universities are dominated by the right. He's so far on the right that looks like the left to him.
When you refer to intellectuals,
That's a very interesting way to look at it, that Jordan Peterson is so far on the right that he sees it to the left.
society, whom do you mean?
I mean people whose end products are ideas. There are other people with great intelligence whose end products are things like the Salk vaccine.
A research scientist is not necessarily an intellectual.
That's right.
An engineer isn't necessarily an intellectual.
That's right. Because the engineer is judged by the end product. Which
That's a good premise. That's a really good premise. Hold on. Okay, cool. That's a good premise that he has. That's a good premise.
which is not simply ideas. If he builds a building that collapses, it doesn't matter how brilliant his idea was, he's ruined. Conversely, if an intellectual who's brilliant has an idea for rearranging society, and that ends in disaster, he pays no price at all. Classic example was the...
That's not true. Like the knowledge of him. Okay, his idea, if it ruins society, people won't look at that idea as good anymore. Like, for example, the people who came up with the idea for lobotomies. Lobotomies was a terrible idea. The whole idea of patriarchal societies. I mean, that's starting to backfire on men now. Like, you know what I mean? Like the concepts that are in the Bible, people are going further and further away from God because of ideas that have came in society. It's not true.
Era between the two world wars, where the intellectuals were all in favor of disarmament, even while Hitler was arming Germany and when Japan was arming and so forth, they were saying we should disband the RAF, the British intellectuals, and so on. And it was not that they convinced the holders of power. The holders of power understood that Germany was rearming secretly, even before Hitler took power.
You make this point, Stanley.
That's not true. It was a debate between the both sides. It was a debate whether or not they should arm or arm. And it wasn't even just the debate of whether or not they should arm or arm. It was a debate on whether or not we should even enter the war in general. That on the American side. On the British side, it was how long do we have to worry before Hitler becomes a problem. People understood that. No, he's full of shit on that. People understood that.
Baldwin, then the British Prime Minister, saw what Hitler was up to.
Oh, yeah, the British and French intelligence services both knew this. The public didn't know this. And Baldwin was not about to tell the British public that Germany was rearming, because the clear implication was that Britain must rearm. And the intellectuals had made rearmament, poison politically.
And his professional opinion as a working politician was that the climate of opinion was such that British democracy couldn't bear the truth.
That's right.
Because of what the intellectuals had done to through journals and newspapers and the chattering classes, so to speak. And what about Vietnam? Lyndon Johnson.
Oh my gosh, the Tet Offensive was...
Before he goes on to Vietnam, we're about to talk about the Tet Offensive, but before he goes on to Vietnam, I know a lot about that, but before he goes on to Vietnam, he said the intellectuals were the reason for the complex understanding of how World War II was going to be played out. If not for the intellectuals, whether he disagrees with the intellectuals or not, World War II could have ended extremely differently. The intellectuals that helped build the bomb or come up with the concepts for the bomb, like I think it was Einstein that sent a message to the government that said, like, Hitler's building a bomb. You know what I mean? Einstein was an intellectual. Intellectuals are needed in that area to challenge the questions. He himself is challenging the time and maybe we should go with economics. I don't understand his point on saying that about intellectuals, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You tell me in the comments.
Hailed by the intellectuals as a huge defeat for the American military forces. After the communists won the war, took over South Vietnam.
Tet Offensive in '68. The communists finally win in '73.
Yeah. The communist leaders themselves said they were devastated by the Tet Offensive. They never won a military battle against American forces the whole time the Vietnam War went on. But in the newspapers, the Tet Offensive was depicted as a great defeat for the United States.
So Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know where he's going with that, but yes, it was seen as a great defeat. That was the whole plan of, I forgot the general's name, Chet, I think Chet. Chep, I don't know his name, General, what was his name? But anyways, he planned that. He attacked on the Tet Offensive because he knew it was going to get into the public. It had nothing to do with intellectuals. The general himself was a genius to understand that even though he lost a lot of, he said, like this is another thing the general said that he didn't add in there. The general said, for every one American that will die, we'll kill 10 Japanese. So think about that. Like he understood, Vietnamese. He understood that the more they show this to the public, the more it gets into the public, the closer the Americans will pull out of the war. And we lost Vietnam again because we backed out. So the Tet Offensive was actually extremely effective on that end. It wasn't the intellectuals. The general himself was smart. It was the public that saw it in general. And everybody in the public and intellectual.
And the military.
I'm going to add this in. The intellectuals were fighting for decades for the war to stop in general. They never succeeded until the Tet Offensive. And it wasn't the intellectuals that succeeded. It was the public that made the decision that we need to bring our people home.
Conducting the war in Vietnam knew that we had won. Not in effect won, that we had won that engagement, the Tet Offensive.
And the communists knew.
Everybody knew except the intellectuals.
Everybody.
And Lyndon Johnson, instead of prosecuting the war, is forced to announce toward the end of 1968 that he is not going to run for re-election. That's the moment when America effectively surrenders in Vietnam.
Yes.
Because the climate of opinion because the intellectuals got things wrong.
They dominated the climate of opinion. And that if, in a democracy, if the people believe the war is unwinnable, then it's unwinnable.
So while we're on the subject of MIT, you referenced...
Like he just said, not the intellectuals, the people believe the war is unwinnable, then it's unwinnable. Stephen Picker now.
Chomsky a lot when you're in your linguistics stuff.
Yes.
You must have been colleagues there then for...
Not in the same department, because he was in linguistics and I was in cognitive science, but certainly colleagues at the same institute, yeah.
And for people that don't know much about Chomsky, can you give a bio for him, or could you tell a little bit about him?
Well, he is famous for two reasons. One of them is his political activism. He is a very vociferous critic of American and British foreign policy. He is a leftist, but not Marxist. He calls himself an anarcho-syndicalist, which is a kind of anarchist of the left. There's also a right-wing anarchist movement, kind of more libertarian, objectivist, Ayn Rand style, but he is more of a communitarian, libertarian anarchist. But anyway, a fierce critic of Israel, of Britain, of the U.S., and an early critic of the Vietnam War. And he has a huge following because of his prolific output in politics. I mean, probably more than 100 books. He's on the Rage Against the Machine, cites him in their liner notes. I think Chumbawamba had one of his lectures on the B-side of one of their records, when they used to be records. But then he is also famous for having really founded the modern approach to linguistics, starting in the 1950s when he was just in his 20s. He pretty much revolutionized the field. He polarized the field. Most people in linguistics are either rabidly in favor of his theories or determined to bring him down, not an entirely healthy state of affairs. So a polarizing figure in linguistics as he is in politics. But in linguistics, he was the first to give linguistics a psychological spin, saying that the problem of the study of language is really a problem of how human children acquire language, which they do without any lessons or instruction or not much in the way of feedback. This, to him, suggested that human children are born with a circuitry in the brain that is specialized for acquiring language. by noting that language is not just a list of sentences. Every sentence that we're uttering is probably uttered for the first time in the history of the universe, but we nonetheless can produce and understand sentences fluently. That means that there must be something in the brain that is an algorithm or a recipe for generating and interpreting sentences rather than a memorized list. And that this changed the whole mission statement for linguistics. It wasn't just listing a bunch of constructions, but rather it was what is the mental software that allows us to use language, and prior to that, the mental software that allows us to acquire language. Also, he...
That's extremely interesting. I got to look into Noam Chomsky. I never heard of this guy for real. I'm going to do some looking into him. You guys are probably going to jump my butt in the comments section for that, but never heard of Noam Chomsky. I'm definitely going to look into that. Like, I like change the whole idea of linguistics because I'm trying to learn French, and I'm trying to think of the fastest way to learn French, and the fastest way is to submerge yourself in the language is what I'm understanding. But also, like, I think there's a trick that people can use to where it can develop faster because submersing in the language just isn't feasible right now. But definitely, that's actually interesting. I'm looking at Noam Chomsky.
Argued that all languages conform to a universal plan, what he called a universal grammar, which he then related to the hypothetical innate circuitry with which children acquire language, that's where language universals come from. They come from the human brain. Whenever you have a theory that is so identified with one individual, whether it be Freud or Piaget or any big theorist, it's never exactly the truth because this is all bigger than any of us. And a field that is too oriented either for or pro or con one person's ideas, I think is somewhat distorted.
And why is it that intellectuals, that is to say people whose end product is ideas, should succumb to that temptation more than, to use your example, a chess grandmaster?
Because a chess grandmaster can be world famous for doing absolutely nothing more than winning chess tournaments and making displays, as many of them do, of playing 5 chess games simultaneously while blindfolded.
But intellectuals, what? They languish in obscurity, no matter how smart.
Well, the whole question of when is someone well known or not came up during the visit of Jim Flynn from New Zealand here a few years ago. He's one of the world's authorities on IQ tests. Mm-hmm. People, in India know about Jim Flynn. People in England, he made a world tour. But I doubt if the people in the next block from where he lives know who he is. If Noam Chomsky had just kept on staying in linguistics, neither of us probably would have ever heard of Noam Chomsky. He would have been just as famous around the world among linguists, but nobody else would have heard of him.
So he didn't believe Noam Chomsky should be known for all of his ideas. It kind of contradicted what he said. Well, I don't know. I don't understand the point. Thomas Sowell and Stephen Pickett on Noam Chomsky. What Stephen Pickett believed that he was not. He didn't actually say what he believed about Noam Chomsky, but Noam Chomsky definitely had an effect on linguistics. He had an effect on how the left thought about American and British politics and foreign policy. He was critical of those things, but he was also very powerful in linguistics. So I guess Thomas Sowell believed he should have just stayed in linguistics and shouldn't have had other opinions about anything else, or else we'd have never heard of him. But because he had an opinion about politics, we heard about him, so it's cheating. I'm all over the place with this. I think he should have been heard. I don't know. Maybe he should have been, maybe he shouldn't have been. So maybe he should have a political opinion. But his argument was intellectuals need to stay out of other areas of endeavorment, almost in a way. I don't understand the argument, actually, to be honest, what he was trying to make there. But anyways, hey, I'm out. Peace.